Okay, just a second. Okay, just make sure audio is working. Good. Okay. All right, everyone. So I want to do a live tutorial today for Fundamentals of Harmony. Those who've been watching the channel, Fundamentals of Harmony is a course for composers and performers who want to go back to basics and work out, what is harmony. Okay. Many of us come from places where we do not have quality instruction in harmony. I had to move to France to get proper training in harmony. I had many different teachers in America, and harmony was always very intellectual, very analysis based, and it really was not in the heart. It wasn't in the fingers, and I could never do fugue. And when I tried to orchestrate my symphony the first time around, I had no idea what I was doing, despite many, many years in conservatory training. Okay, so obviously there was a problem. And ultimately, I did a program in France and I saw how beautiful their method of teaching harmony is. And it's just direct and it teaches you like from hands-on experience. So I am building a course now called Fundamentals of Harmony, which will bring this French tradition to English-speaking audiences. Okay, so in the French tradition, you're going to be building above and below. So as you can see here on my screen, we have a soprano exercise. Okay, and you're going to have to listen beneath the soprano. So you're going to have to listen for the bass, and then you're going to have to fill in the other voices, and you'll likely test out the middle voices. This is incredibly simple because there's not all this fancy stuff. This is just root position chords. So it's very, very restrictive, but it's also very, very difficult because it's not a natural way of hearing. The natural way of hearing is you have a top line melody and then everything else exists in subordination. So when you first start doing exercises, you may feel immense frustration because you think, oh, root position, easy peasy. French say pas du tout. Okay, pas du tout. Okay, root position chords are actually harder than first inversion and second inversion because you have so little information. When you have first inversion chords, you're going to have lots of clues. Okay, which once we build that, we'll go over that. It's nicer. But with root position, it's just stark. It's bare. Okay, it's kind of like going back into the Renaissance, but a little bit more tonality mixed in. And I am currently building a paid course that will hopefully go live in the spring 2026, if not then summer. But of course, there will be a public option as well. I want to definitely have subtitles for the paid course so that those of you who struggle with English, I know I talk very quickly and you come from other countries, that you can follow along very easily. If you want to get a taste for what that's going to look like, I do have a number of shorts already for how to voice reposition chords. All right, let's hop into it. So we have the soprano exercise and we need to figure out the bass. So we're going to have to listen below. First stage is going to be preparation. You have to do the preparation. If you don't do the preparation, you're going to have very sloppy exercises and you're going to be obsessed with just getting the exercise done, and your progress will be very superficial and you'll have a lot of wasted time. The way that you regain time, especially if you're starting later in life, is you do that preparation. Okay, this is what I did when I was in France. Okay. So you need to sing the exercise multiple times. If you have trouble singing, you can play it a couple times on the piano and get it in your ear. But these melodies are pretty simple enough that most competent musicians, all competent musicians, should be able to sing it with little difficulty. Okay? So, si, la, fa, sol, mi, fa. La, si, la, do, mi, re, do, la, do, re. Okay, and of course, I'm not worried about how nicely you sing, is to get the harmony in your ear. That's the fastest, most direct way is to sing. Okay, sing it and get it in your ear. Now, I recommend also doing it at different tempos. So now we're going to do it slower. Re, si, la, fa, sol, mi, fa. La, si, la, do, mi, every time you sing it, you're going to hear more and more of the harmony. You may not have the vocabulary to describe what you're hearing, but I guarantee when you sing it, you're hearing something harmonically. Then I recommend singing it very quickly. Re, re, si, la, fa, sol, mi, fa, la, si, la, do, mi, re, do, la, do, re. Notice each time that I sung it, I added certain details that were not in the music. No, notice I did a ritardando, do, la, do. Notice I kind of paused, re, re, si, la, fa, sol, mi, fa. There are harmonic implications associated with that, which I'll be showing you. Okay, after that, you gotta, or maybe even before, you gotta immediately figure out the key. Okay, computer's bugging out. So we see one flat, F major, D minor. Last note of the piece is D. We see C sharp, which is leading to a D minor, end of story. If you have a struggle to figure out basic keys, okay, up to five sharps, five flats, that's an emergency situation that has to be figured out because we cannot progress with harmony if you're gonna do the exercise and not even know a key. Then you're gonna be off on the wrong footing. So the keys, whatever you need to do to just nip it in the bud, it's an emergency situation. Okay? So it's in D minor. And now what I recommend doing is to figure out the phrases. Okay, so our singing preparation really helped us. Re, re, si, la, fa, sol, mi, fa. Right? The music kind of comes to a natural close. It's not definitive close, but it's kind of a natural close. So for me, that's the first phrase. La, si, la, do, mi, re, la, do, re. And then we clearly have a second phrase. Next thing I recommend doing is to write in the scale degrees. Now, again, some of these preparatory steps may seem super basic, but you have to do them if you want to be able to do harmony on your own. Now, if you want a teacher, I don't know what to tell you except go to France. I had to move to France. I had a specific teacher and I had to stay there and just go with different teachers to get this knowledge. But if you do not have access to a teacher and you want to kind of do it at home, then you need to be responsible and you gotta put in the scale degrees. So notice if I sing on the scale degrees, 1, 1, 6, 5. As soon as I get to the five, I hear the harmony. Okay, 6, 5, 3, 4, 2, 3. I also hear the harmony on the three. So the goal in writing out the scale degrees is to start to notice patterns. For example, notice that we have a 1, 1, 1. Okay, what harmonies? You got to change the harmony. So there's not many options. When you write in these scale degrees for the soprano, over time, you're going to notice patterns, and that's how you're going to get quicker at harmony. Next, I recommend making a chart of the chord possibilities. It sounds super basic, right? But the goal in this is to eliminate kind of unnecessary mental searching because these exercises, when you do them, you're going to find they're really hard, okay? They're really hard. But what you can do to kind of keep your mind a little bit more relaxed is you make a chart of what are the chord possibilities, and then you don't have to think. So you see a G, for example, notice we have 1, 4, 5, 6. That's all that's possible in minor. I talked about that in the first tutorial. Double check it if you're not sure. So in the course of this exercise, if we see a G, we'll notice according to our chart possibilities, the G only belongs to the four. There is no other chord in D minor for root position chords that's going to have that G. So we can use rationality sometimes to figure out the exercise. Over time, you'll be more and more, your ear is going to guide you. But at the beginning, it's such an unnatural way of hearing, like especially hearing below, that you're going to have to use rationality to get there. Based on all this information that we just went over, I recommend, or I urge you to then figure out the cadences. I went over the four basic cadences in the first tutorial. I hope to release some shorts coming out soon so more people can access it. But if I sing re, re, si, la, right, it has to be the dominant. It just has to be because the music comes to a pause, right? Okay. In addition, we see an A, okay, and we look at our chart. Well, the A only belongs to the one or it belongs to the five. If I was to have the five here, sorry, the one, it probably wouldn't sound as good, but you can test it out on your own. And that's called a half cadence when we pause on the five. Notice how most of the measures have quarter notes. So here we're pausing. So that's definitely something noteworthy. We also have an imperfect authentic cadence, okay, because we end on a three. If we look at our chart, that F either belongs to a six or a four. Okay, sorry, six or the one. Now, why is it not the six? I'm going to go over that in the next slide, so don't worry. Another reason I'm doing these live tutorials is if you remember the first tutorial in which I presented four cadences, I hadn't included the imperfect authentic cadence. I didn't realize we'd be using it this soon, but there are certain pedagogical things I want to illustrate in this episode, so I am incorporating it. So another reason I'm doing these live tutorials is so I can make sure when I release the paid product in the springtime that I don't have any missing links. So this was a good wake-up call. Then we have the ending. La, si, la, do, mi, re, do, la, do, re. Okay. And we have to end the piece with some kind of oomph, right? And the only way to really do that is a perfect authentic cadence or the plagal cadence. And if this is confusing you, then just review the shorts or the first tutorial and do the work. You have to do the exercise to really experience what I'm talking about. The things I'm saying I did not learn by watching videos. Okay. Things I learned is by doing the homework and then getting corrections. Okay. And then but really doing the work. Okay. We did the preparatory work. So now let's fill in what we know. Okay. So I suggest starting with the starting and ending notes. So it's in D minor. So it starts on the D. It can't be the D below the staff. That's way too low. Okay. Review the rules for reposition chords for the ranges. We also can't start on the D above because the soprano is on that D, right? You need space for the other voices. So it's already been decided. Then we have the ending. Okay, it's got to be on a D. Okay, so congratulations. Then, based on our work with the cadences and the phrases, well, we said there's a half cadence here. That's a five. So it's an A. Now, which octave? We don't know just yet. Okay, either might work. I kind of know it's going to be this lower A, but we'll figure it out as we go. We have the imperfect authentic cadence, right? So it's a 5-1, but the soprano does not have the tonic. Okay, so it does not feel conclusive. Now, I thought I had a slide on, let me just double check if I don't have a slide on the, no, I think I forgot it. Okay, too bad. But for this the imperfect authentic cadence, if you look at the bass, so A to D, okay, one of our first impulses when we see this F, right, and we look at the chart of possibilities, is to have the deceptive cadence, right? The F would be the deceptive cadence. Okay, that's a very common thing to do. A to be flat, but notice how doing this A E to B flat F is going to cause us parallel fifths. I understand it's a bit hard to see. Let me see if I can get, if I have a different version that I can show. Just a second. One more second. Okay. Okay, perfect. I'm sorry about that. I had two different versions up and then I got confused. Okay, so hopefully this will make it a little bit clearer. So we're trying to figure out the cadences, okay? And so we have the half cadence right here, okay? We have the imperfect authentic cadence. Now, as I had mentioned, if you were to harmonize this as a 5 to 6, which is a deceptive cadence, that would be expected, right? We have the F in the tonic, and if we look at our chart of possibilities, we have the F in the 6. So that is a possibility, but notice what the soprano is doing. It's doing E to F. So if we were to voice the bass as A to B flat to do a deceptive cadence, we're going to have parallel fifths. So one of the first uses in root position chords for the perfect authentic cadence is to replace the deceptive cadence. And of course, the deceptive cadence is used often to replace the perfect authentic cadence. Okay. And then, of course, at the end of the piece, we have the perfect authentic cadence. We have a root to root motion in the bass, 5 to 1, plus we have the leading tone to tonic in the soprano. Okay, so sorry about that little hiccup, but I wanted to make sure that you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, all right. Next thing you want to do is you want to fill in everything that you know. Okay, so we're just going to fill in the 5, as we talked about, with the 5 to 1 for the imperfect authentic cadence. And then at the ending, we have the perfect authentic cadence, and it's also a 5 to 1. So now we have most of the well, maybe a quarter of the exercise done, but we have the essential moments. Next, what I want to point out is recognizing the same harmony. So you'll notice in this measure here, we have la, do, mi. And then in this measure here, we have do, la, do. Okay. And your likely natural impulse would be to recognize an arpeggio, right? To see it's an arpeggio. And you're absolutely right. So one of the things that happens is we doubt what seems most obvious. And harmony actually is a study of what's natural and what's obvious. So usually in harmony exercises, you're going to be changing the harmony for each beat, like here, 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 here. Each time the soprano changes, the bass would be changing. But there are times where the soprano is going to be moving, French we say il doit bouger. Okay, it's going to be moving around. And it might be to get from a higher elevation. So it's down on this A. So maybe in order to end the exercise, the composer or the person who wrote the exercise, myself, needed to change elevations. So in this case, we're not going to be changing the harmony on the beat. We're going to be holding the bass because we see it's all one harmony. Likewise here, do, la, do. It's clearly all one harmony, or hopefully it becomes clear to you it's one harmony. Okay, we see the dominant, so it's a 5. This is a little more advanced for where we are in our studies, but I mention it because once we start doing the Henri Chalon, which is the French workbook series that I used in France, it's amazing. And if you do it, like you grow, it's amazing. Okay. But he doesn't mention that, and there will be an exercise where there's one measure, and if you're trying to harmonize it, each beat, it just is not going to work. Okay. So I'm just throwing this in there now so it enters your consciousness to start being aware. Occasionally, you will have a measure where though the soprano is moving, it is most likely to regain better spacing, right? Maybe we get too low, but the bass is not going to be changing along with it. Okay. Don't stress about this, but I have to mention it now so that it just enters your subconscious, it enters your awareness, and then later we can start talking about it. Okay. All right. So I want to talk about the getting the subdominant. So you can see we got most of the exercise, a lot of the exercise. Okay. So the 4 is going to precede the 5. Okay, so the most basic progression we have in harmony will be 1, 4, 5. Technically, I guess 1, 5, 1. But the 4 is a subdominant. Okay, so it precedes the 5. So anywhere where we had the 5 in this exercise, the chord before our natural impulse is going to be to have the 4. Okay, so we have si la. Okay, what are you gonna have before? We'll see if you can do the 4. If we look at our chart of possibilities, we have a B flat in the soprano. So the B flat belongs to the 4 or it belongs to the 6. Okay, and in this case, it works better with the 4. Likewise, here we have the 4th scale degree. So probably you're going to want the 4. Again, there's certain things in harmony are so obvious that I think we become accustomed to think, oh, it couldn't possibly be so direct. But sometimes it is so direct. And again, if we verify, if we look at our chart of possibilities, we'll see that the G only belongs to the 4. So, hey, we were right. Okay. So you see how we're thinking. We got the essential moments. Now, then we got the dominant, right? Okay. And now we're getting a subdominant. Okay, so we're kind of connecting the phrases. Uh, Likewise, right here, si la. Okay, can you do a 4? Does a 4 work before? If I wanted to try the 6, because we look at our chart of possibilities and we see that the B flat does belong to the 6, to the chord on the 6, that is a major problem because the soprano is already doing the 6. So then we're going to have parallel octaves. Okay. And I'll probably add an example for the when I do release the paid version because that's actually a good idea to show example. Okay. So just try to imagine it in your head. You see soprano is doing 6 to 5. So si la. So if we were to harmonize this as a 6, oh Lord. Okay. C'est pas possible. Okay. It's I'll show it. Okay, we clearly have parallel octaves, right? B flat to A, B flat to A. Let me just undo that so I don't throw myself up. Okay, so as you're going to see, process of elimination is going to help you out a lot. Okay, at the end, re, do, la, do. Okay, So we have the D here. We look at our chart, and you don't have to, I hope you don't just think only logically and rationally, but it will help you a lot. There's also just another element of just being a musician, right? And just like, what am I going to hear? So the D belongs to the six, it belongs to the one, or belongs to the four. And then we test it out. Okay. And I found just from my own work that the four was best. Okay. But you're going to have to do that work. You're going to have to verify for yourself. Okay. So notice how we're basically done figuring out the bass. Now, I hope that as I explain this, that it's making sense to you. Okay. It is possible that you recognize that harmony is something you have to work on, but it feels too fast. This is the pacing I will be talking for the final product. Okay. So the expectation is that you're going to have to make the effort to learn, right? When I was in France, first of all, I learned this in French. Okay, and I was not fluent at the time, though I did have a good enough level to kind of get by. And it's easier when you're interested in the topic. But what I had to do is I had to take notes throughout the lesson. My teacher was really great. He would write out corrections, and I spent 5 to 10 hours studying those corrections. So likewise for yourself, if you're finding that this is too fast, then you may have to go back and rewatch and just take notes, go super slowly. But of course, the real action is going to be actually doing the exercises, which I'm going to show you. Okay. Finally, we're going to fill in what remains. So let me just sing the exercise one more time so we get it fresh in our ears. Re, re, si, la, fa, sol, mi, fa, la, si, la, do, mi, re, do, la, do, re. Okay, and notice how it's getting quicker, or we're figuring things out quicker because we took the time to do that preparatory stuff. One other thing I want to just quickly mention is when we have the final product available, there will be subtitles. So if it's going too fast for you, because you have difficulty understanding English, like it's not your first language, there will be subtitles. You can check out the shorts that I've been doing for reposition chords. It has subtitles, and I think what I can see is people are able to follow that way. Okay. That also is another possibility. So now we got to figure out what remains. Okay. The first thing is I mentioned the 5 to 4. So re, si, la, si. Here we have a B flat. Okay. And if we look at our chart of possibilities or start thinking in your head, the B flat in D minor is either the 4 or it's the 6. So we only have two possibilities. If we were to harmonize this chord here as a B flat, okay, we're going to have A to B flat, A to B flat. That's parallel octaves, right? Double check the rules for repositioning chords. So process of elimination leads us to the 4. I mention this because I think a lot of composers and performers don't consider this possibility. As we bring in more complex chord possibilities, like the first inversion, second inversion, this will be less common. But for root position chords, it is possible that after the 5, you're going to have a 4. There's also another consideration we're going to learn in the future episode of how to properly voice this chord, but I want to just bring it in and see how you handle it. Also, we see here, la, si, la, okay, I harmonize this as a 4, okay, because again, same situation, A to B flat. If I do A to B flat, we're going to have parallel octaves, so it doesn't work. So I mention this because I just don't think, unless someone points it out, that you're going to be confused. So I mention it now. You have to get ready for it. The other thing is we have the deceptive cadence, right? La, la, do, mi, re. If I were to harmonize this, we have a D. With the D, well, that's going to be a perfect authentic cadence, and it's going to end the piece. Double check the first tutorial in which I present the cadences, though I hope to do a short series soon to refresh everyone. So process of elimination gives us the deceptive cadence. Now, we also are missing a chord here, and we're missing a chord, two chords here. That you can finish for homework. So here is the homework. I will make it available on the website, barnsheetmusic.com/fundamentals of harmony in due time. So let me just review it. On a sheet of sheet music paper, so it has to be handwritten because you cannot learn harmony with the computer. It's not possible. Okay? You're going to realize this exercise. This is the exact same exercise we did. I put in the opening notes to make sure that you get started on the right footing. I will not always do it. It's just a very basic beginner thing to do, but soon you're going to have to figure it out. You can either, review this episode and get the bass that we already figured out together and put it, or if you really want to test yourself, you could try redoing the exercise. You'll be surprised how quickly you've forgotten things, but as a result, you'll start to recall, like, how did I figure this out? Or you'll kind of use your own method that you'll develop. So the goal is to complete this exercise, so get the entire bass line and fill in the middle voices. If you need a refresher on how to fill in the middle voices, you can check out the YouTube videos I have, Rules for Reposition Chords, or How to Properly Voice Deceptive Cadence, and both are available on my website. Again, this is for a Fundamentals of Harmony course for composers and performers who really want to just go back to basics and iron things out, especially if you're not making it to fugue and you're frustrated, or especially if you're orchestrating and it's just kind of hit or miss and you feel like you don't know what you're doing. The harmony is going to give you a really good baseline. It doesn't solve all your problems, but it's going to make things available to you that were never available before. You can leave any questions you have about this in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.